Welcome everyone back to Poppy Knowles. Hope we're all doing really well. If you're new around here, hit that like button, hit the subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Can't thank you enough for it. And we're here again with another preview. Carlton play tomorrow night, which is a Thursday. If you're watching this in the future, the 9th of the 5th, 2024, at the home, the spiritual home of football, the MCG. In what is a really exciting clash. The Blues coming into this, their last five, their form has been a little bit iggledy-piggledy, as we say back home, losing 3 of the last 5 wins coming against the high-flying Giants and Fremantle Dockers, but losses against the Crows, Geelong and arch enemy, the Magpies. Melbourne, after an early loss, they've really found some form, winning 4 of the last 5. A loss in between 2 wins in Brisbane. They lost that game at home, it has to be said, 82-60. But wins against Adelaide, Port, Richmond and Geelong, handing them their first defeat last time out. And Melbourne look pretty good, it has to be said. They are finding their way, a little bit more of a slingshotty game style as well from them, which is great to see. Everyone looks to see that. They're still being combative in the middle, but they look a very good side, particularly with their wide players. Trent Rivers has really found another gear, it has to be said. Billings is a real interesting proposition for them as well. But also, Caleb Windsor and co really taken to it like a duck to water. So they've got a bit of outside run there to complement their real hard combative edge, which you see. And it's a real evolution from them. They play a really nice game of football. They're really tough to break down. No longer are they that contested bull side, which people downplay. But this is a real clash of their heavyweights. This is a game that genuinely both sides relish. And no matter where they are on the ladder, they play some good footy. You've only got to go back. 2023, we beat them by 4. In the return fixture, we beat them by 2. There was the blowout, obviously, round 1 last year by a lot, let's be honest, 38 points when we first came up against them this year, sorry. But that being said, the Blues, they'll go into this knowing that even though that was a community series game, they showcased the warning signs that if they didn't match it in the centre, they will get beaten. Let's look at what they've done this year. I always think that that's the most important. And let's look at the scoring breakdown. And this is over the last 5. I think now we've had enough games. Doing a whole average doesn't take into account where the sides are. And you can see here that Carlton, let's be honest, from stoppage, still one of the best sides in the league. They've tried to balance it out, though, Melbourne, and you can see that they're about the AFL average from the scoring. This is the interesting one here, the scores against. The 14th hardest side to score against. We're counting the second easiest. And that's been a real balance. And you're going to hear that a lot at the moment. At the moment, when I look at Melbourne, they're very balanced. We're trying to find that balance. And a lot was said at the start of the year about Carlton's stoppage game. You actually see that the stoppage scores weren't that bad against, and they were median. And that's the happy place. And this is where people over-panic with the stats. As you can see there, Carlton are the 8th best differential versus the 7th. And you can see it's all good scoring. You've got to defend it. And really what you're looking for is the scores from turnover. And the turnover here, Carlton are the 2nd highest scoring side from turnover. Again, a median average for the Ds. The Ds, they're averaging from turnover 43.6. So that puts them 4th. So that's wrong on the stat there. It shouldn't say 12. Against, though, you can see here, right? It's really, really apparent. The 3rd hardest team to score against, Melbourne, versus the 9th easiest team to score. Putting Carlton 9th, putting them 5th, which is really, really interesting. And this is where you really see Carlton. Carlton are all or nothing on that turnover. It's the front half. The midfield to the forward is where their turnover. The defensive half score generation from turnover is the 3rd worst in the league versus the 5th best. And against, again, really hard to score against from defensive half. Their forward pressure is good. Carlton the 4th easy. So if you're putting a lot of onus on the fourth and you're still fourth easiest team to score against on defensive half turnover, that paints the picture of your forward half pressure. And you can see Carlton the second worst defensive half differential versus the fourth best. And this is where I'm talking about balance. Carlton have got to find that balance because the numbers sometimes don't add up with what they're trying to do in game. And it's plainly obvious that if we did these stats in the first 5 games, it looked a lot more healthy. And the only one that was probably the negating was the stoppage scores. And that's all well and good. But when you look last year, Carlton were like really high with dominance in the stoppage, but they were really low in scores against from the dominance. So it was a true dominance. Now they're trying to find that balance from being offensive to defensive. And I think that the balance in my heart of hearts is the first 4 games. I think they're always going to hemorrhage goals, but they've got to be bold. They've got to be industrious. And it's in them. It's in them. Don't try and get safe. For this game plan to work, Carlton have got to be bold, got to be industrious, and got to literally, as fans, as players, as a club, cop it on the chin that sometimes defensive half is going to be high against. It's going to be high. But we're looking at that turnover differential. We want that turnover differential to be top 3, bottom 5 against. And then that stoppage, we want it to be bottom 5 against, regardless of where we are in there. So we get the control from the source. And it's there. It's there. And it makes sense when you look at the personnel we've got, to be honest. It really does make sense with the personnel. That the stoppage game is never, if we play to our strengths, going to be high against. It's never going to be high against because I don't feel like we can be over ostentatious there because it will kill us on the back when it comes back to us with the loose kicks and there. So I don't think it's quite far. I feel like at times we get caught between overcorrecting what the media say and playing perfect football. And you don't have to play perfect football. You have to play football that's good for you. And for me, if I was grading the club on what I'd expect good football would look like, I'd say top 10 stoppage scores, bottom 5 against. Turnover, top 5 for, bottom 6 against. Defensive half generation, I'm happy for that to be in the bottom 9. But against, it has to be mirrored. Break even in that start. If you can break even in that start, your forward half turnover game is holding up. And that's where it is. And that's all application. And that's all risking to let that defensive half generation be high. Because I don't think we have the personnel to make it incredibly low. I don't think we have the pace to burn. Now, let's look at them pressure numbers. So the pressure numbers are obviously key, especially if you're playing a forward half game. We want to see this. And you can see Carlton the 8th side. So this, to me, is a little bit low. If we're playing a team defence, I want this in the top 5, as Melbourne's is. And against, Carlton are very easy to pressure. They come up against a lot of pressure because of where they're playing with the ball. They're playing it in heavy contested areas where you look at Melbourne, they get free. They're hard to catch. They're playing in the high percentage areas of being freedom. What that means is it's ball movement with purpose. They're getting the ball to places where there isn't other people. Carlton like to play with the ball in people. Is a personnel thing. Makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Cripper's not going to be that player that's going to blaze 20 metres ahead of the ball. But you've got to find a happy balance. And you can see, again, differential, the second best from Melbourne. 18, 17, 16, 4th worst from the Blues. Tackles is a really interesting one. So when you're 8 for pressure acts and 13 for tackles, that's where it is. You want one of these numbers in the top 3, really, top 5, and it's not so bad. So I'll forgive the 5-place slip for them because their pressure numbers are so high, where Carlton's, their median, you want to be an expert in something. And at the moment, it feels like they're half committing in that area. Against, Carlton are one of the hardest sides to tackle, which is a good thing. But it's the pressure that puts them under the ball. I'm not bothered about them riding the tackle. I'm bothered about them finding the space to dictate the play. You can see the 5th hardest team to tackle in Melbourne. And then the differentials, you can see the 2nd best versus the 5th. Kind of balances it out in the differential. But I think it's clear to all the highlights. And then the tackles inside 50. you can see Carlton put so much onus on this, and this is a warped stat because this is coming from key forwards and midfielders, where you look at the tackles inside 50 of the teams in the top 5, they're coming from the small forwards and the half forwards, the pocket forwards. They're coming from more traditional areas. Now, that's okay for the team defence, but if your midfielders and key forwards are leading the way for you, I know we've got a few outs there. Well, Fogarty is the out. For me, that's an issue. That's an issue. You can see here a more traditional midfield-based defence, and this is why they're so hard to score against from that defensive turnover. It's a lot more well-rounded. It's a good stat for Carlton, but for that stat to be really good, we need to see that pressure axe be really high, because that means you're slowing teams down and getting them on your terms. Let's look at the attacking numbers. You can see here, for a team that targets Harry and Charlie, to be 8th marks inside 50 rate is probably why you target Harry and Charlie. You want to spread it out. Look at Melbourne's key forwards versus ours. They ain't in the same league, in the ballpark. And this is a problem when you look at the against. Very easy to mark against Carlton because, as we've said, a lot of onus on the forward half turnover. If it's quick ball, it's 1 out. It's easy. It's easy. And remember that what I've said there, 1 out, because there's going to be a stat that gives you a lot of hope. Goals per inside 50, Carlton 6th. Again, a lot of forward pressure here is equating to that. But when you're not having the easiest, Carlton are one of the hardest set shots at goal, one of the hardest risk factors, that shows there that the pressure sometimes, it's a very labour intensive. And you look again, one of the easiest teams, nearly 27.8% of inside 50s become goals against Carlton versus the hardest team to score against in the Demons. And scores per inside 50, Carlton again showing this forward pressure is very good, but it doesn't flip on the other end. And look at Melbourne's both stats for these. Okay, good, 4, really good against. Even it out. So what it's showing you is all the hard work is required both ends of the ground. And it's, again, finding a balance. Finding a balance. Are you willing to change your ball movement in the forward half to complement your forward half pressure and maybe take a knock per inside 50 and have 10th, have 11th, but be 5th hardest? That would be where the massive improvement goes. It's very simple stuff. And then you look at the defensive resistance. So Carlton, one of the worst sides at rebound 50 rates. This is a big change from last year because our stats were almost identical to Melbourne. Our ability to repel was incredible. At the moment, because we're giving up easier shots, with the second worst side at rebound 50 rates, and it's the 5th hardest to get it out. So again, you see them numbers on the red. They're the 7th easiest side to get out of rebound 50. We're the 5th hardest. So again, forward pressure's really there. But then the defensive half scores. They don't match up, if you know what I mean. They don't match up because it's coming back. So it's hard to get out of rebound 50. But when you find a way, creates goals. And this is a big one here. The intercept marks. Carlton have really gone on a spoiling journey this year. The number 1 marking side of the comp you're going up against, intercept marking. Carlton again. And okay, McGovern's out. But Whittaker in intercept marks. Kemp intercept marks. These players are capable of doing it. Even last week, you saw a few from Young. It's about being a bit more ostentatious defensively, but also giving them chance to be one-on-one. Because look, the number 1 one-on-one side in the league, Carlton, versus 16th. And the reason is they don't create them 1-outs. We do. So it's basically application. It's all there. And this is going to be a really tough game. And this is a game that I am genuinely looking forward to watching because I feel this is going to be the load test of the system. It's kind of there. And you can see with the stats, they mirror out in good places. It's just getting that 1%. Like, I would actually say it's closer now than it's ever been. And that is what's irritating. It's so close, yet so far. And the numbers are screaming at that. So for me, the focus in this game is finding alternate avenues to go. Don't plow it into 50, which gives your team chance to set up in the event of the turnover. And it needs to be moved a little bit more fluid. No overuse of the ball, because then we commit 2 people. It's finding the balance of how many players we commit forward, but how many players we commit back. And it's somewhere a higgledy-piggledy at the moment of 3 seasons of system, and they're kind of getting used to it. I'm not 100% alarmed, but seeing my rant last week about Collingwood, the pressure and application is key when it's not going well. And when it's wrong, it's going to come on there. So it's got to be bolder. It's got to be harder. It's got to be more dangerous. And if I could give any advice to the boys, concede 100 on defensive turnover, score 120. That's the mindset. That Geelong game, I think, has taken a lot out of them because it was application, but it was the right mindset. Be bold. Be aggressive. Be brave. Look at Sydney. Look at GWS, the teams that are getting all the froth. It's bold. They're willing to concede, to execute their game plan, and then the most important pressure comes on. That changes everyone. Scoreboard pressure. Scoreboard pressure. That is the most important pressure. It's going to be a really intelligent game, this. I'm really looking forward to this because I feel this game here, the Blues, look at it, and they shouldn't panic. They should be able to look these teams in the eye and go, we're mano a mano, we're good. I'm looking forward to this game. Can't wait to commentate it tomorrow on the BA show. Make sure you're there. Give me some love. Peace, love, and light. Pom out.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella